30 years ago, South Africa stood together and voted for the end of apartheid. And the haters refused to admit it. But South Africa was under sanctions back then. So we were struggling with the economy. We were not able to take part in international sports. Life wasn't great. The West then did not agree with what was happening in South Africa. And if you don't believe me, here's a quick look at some of the sanctions we were under. Pre-1994. Guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Nix. I hope you're going to enjoy this video. If you do, make sure to like and comment. And then make sure to support me with a subscribe. All of these actions gets my channel in front of new audiences, and then I have the chance to make them subscribe. And so, I will win the world eventually. So here's a look at some of the sanctions that South Africa was under. Bans were placed on imports, including coal, iron, steel, agricultural products, textiles, and shellfish. Foreign companies were pressured by international campaigns. Investments were taken out of South Africa. Restrictions on access to foreign finance. South Africa also faced strict controls and bans on the export of sensitive goods such as computers and capital machinery used by the police and military. We also had military restrictions. The UN Security Council made a voluntary arms embargo, prohibited all states from selling or shipping arms, ammunition, military vehicles, and related equipment to South Africa. From a diplomatic and political relationship point of view, many countries withdrew their ambassadors. They closed consular facilities and refused to settle any trade agreements with South Africa. We were also suspended from participating in the UN General Assembly, expelled from the Olympic Games and Commonwealth, among other international organizations. And then South Africa was banned from most major international sporting events, including Olympics, rugby, and cricket test matches, like I said earlier. But today, a new monster has taken over South Africa, and it doesn't wear a uniform, and it doesn't have a name such as apartheid. This monster hides in tender contracts, fake invoices, and political associations. This monster is corruption, and its damage could be more devastating than the damage caused during the apartheid era. So today I'm going to talk about how decades of corruption has quietly dismantled the free South Africa many of us were promised after apartheid. The dire consequences of the ANC's looting over a period of 30 years and what that's going to look like in 10 years' time, because that's when the consequences are going to hit us. South Africa was promised a freedom from fear, poverty, injustice, but today, freedom for the majority of South Africans looks like this. Comparing it to the other G20 countries, South Africa's murder rate per 100,000 is 43.7. Our closest rival is Mexico at 25. The country with the lowest murder rate is Japan, 0.2. China, 0.5. For all your pandering to China, selling South Africa out to them, you'd think you would at least learn their business practices and apply it to achieving a murder rate of 0.5. But that's just my advice, hashtag just saying. From a rate per 100,000, 72.1. How long has it taken President Cyril Cupcake to declare gender-based violence a national disaster? 72.1. Our closest rival, Brazil, 35. The winner, Japan, 1. Unemployment rate, South Africa, 33.5. Our closest rival, Turkey, 9.4. The winner, the country with the lowest unemployment rate, Russia, 2.5. And again, for all your dealings with Russia as part of BRICS, etc., you could maybe learn a couple of lessons from their business practices. But it honestly seems like the ANC is just incapable of learning from others, taking advice and implementing it. But quickly, let's talk about nominal GDP. Billion USD. South Africa, 373. Our closest is Argentina at 604. Almost double. The winner, country with the highest nominal GDP, United States, 28.7 billion. Cyril, if you want to know why you shouldn't be part of the G20, Trump and Poland currently talking about Poland joining. Here's 4 reasons why. Just 4. I suppose if we rally together, we could find a lot more. Murder rate, 43.7. Rape rate, 72.1. Unemployment rate, 33.5. Nominal GDP, South Africa, 373, compared to the United States, sitting at 28.7 billion. South Africa isn't in an era of apartheid anymore. We're in an era of corruption. It has become our new form of oppression. It drains schools, it drains clinics, it drains infrastructure and hope. So although South Africa doesn't have apartheid anymore, we do have corruption. And corruption is just a new type of apartheid. South Africa's removal from the FATF's greylist means our country is now seen as a lower risk destination for financial investment. Fantastic. It was good news. It was a sliver of hope amongst the very dark clouds circling our South African land. Being removed from the grey list means that loans are less expensive, foreign investors are more confident, and technically South Africans are richer. Supposedly, allegedly. My pocket's not seeing any difference. I don't know how you all feel about that. I have pondered for a while now how this is possible. How South Africa can be removed from the grey list after I had just done a couple of videos about the financial debt Cyril is putting us under. More than 6 different international loans from the EU, the World Bank, African Development Bank, all of them in just 2025. And then this comes out, and I've pondered it for a while. So, there is so much corruption across all government institutions. That's plain as day. But how did South Africa get removed from the grey list? Boy, oh boy, was I happy when I came across this article, which put it all into perspective for me. And I hope it does for you too. Before we dive into the article, subscribe, drop a comment. Was the removal from the grey list a surprise for you too? You can see, there are no dots to join here. Or there are too many dots to join. Let's dive straight into that article from Foreign Policy. The headline states, South Africa gets a pass on rampant corruption. Why is a leading global watchdog turning a blind eye? And I state this in many of my videos. The EU, the World Bank, the African Development Bank, they're funding corruption because they know what's happening in this country. What on earth are they thinking? For me, it's about them being able to export our minerals undercover, to pay less for it, because none of them care about us. Not one of them stood up the G20 and said to the ANC, yo, can you stop your bullning? We need you to actually have results to be part of this G20. Not one of them did that, because they don't care about you, they do not care about me. They give these loans and then take minerals out of the country under the veil of darkness, paying less for it, profiting off it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why the whole of Africa is in the state it is. because the corrupt leaders sell those resources for less than it's worth. And then they take investments. They're investing in nothing but more corruption. I digress. Let's get into this article. So, foreign policy says corruption has a long and sordid history in South Africa. But don't look at the Financial Action Task Force to help fight it. In late October, the world's leading intergovernmental anti-money laundering watchdog removed South Africa from its grey list, subject to increased monitoring. The decision raises major concerns at a time when South Africa is hosting the G20 summit, embroiled in a sweeping corruption scandal implicating leaders at the highest level of government and involving dozens of politically motivated killings. These are the thoughts that have been running through my brain, between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. South Africa landed on the grey list in February 2023 due to glaring deficiencies in its protections against money laundering and terrorism financing. The listing followed the hearings and subsequent reports of the Zondo Commission, which operated from 2018 to 2022. The findings named and famed hundreds of South African officials for acts of corruption, including nearly 100 prominent African National Congress Party officials, many of which remain in power to this day. That screams rampant corruption. Nobody brought it up at the G20. The result is nothing short of a country in crisis. Oh, that statement breaks my heart a little. Wow. In a speech last month, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa declared an economic emergency, highlighting how corruption corrodes competitiveness. You don't say. This oak needs Sherlock Holmes to figure it out for him at this rate. Cyril also said that it contributes to the country's economic malaise. South Africa has one of the highest overall unemployment rates in the world. It is more than 3 times higher than the next highest unemployment rate of the G20 countries. Young South Africans, joblessness reached 62.4%. And then we wonder why gambling and drinking looks the way it does in South Africa, while gender-based violence looks the way it does in South Africa. Because you cannot expect a testosterone-fueled man who's busy developing his identity to now just sit at home all day and not feel frustrated and angry and useless. And that's the problem, Cyril. There's no hope. And then you tax 20% on gambling tax. But that board hasn't had full board members for over 11 years. An absolute failure from the side of Park Style, the very same man, highly incompetent, trying to organize us a deal with Trump. Back to the article. There is little indication that corruption has been contained. Another investigative panel, the Madlanga Commission, is now probing an expansive corruption scandal involving police-linked kickbacks from organized crime syndicates, as well as high-level interference in a task force addressing political killings. South Africa's recently dismissed police minister stands accused of aiding a criminal cartel, receiving payments from a gangster whose crimes allegedly included graft, contact fraud, and even attempted murder. Nearly 150 municipal employees have been assassinated in South Africa since 2018. In 7 years, 8 years, 150 municipal employees have been assassinated, as well as 5 prosecutors in the last 5 years. And all of that excludes the whistleblowers who we've lost to the cause of corruption. Yet, according to the head of South Africa's National Prosecuting Authority, who testified before the commission this month, those of us in power that should be doing something about it are powerless to do anything about it, then why are you in your position pulling a salary? Like, how soulless are you? Like, no ethics and no morals. You know, the definition of ethics, if you want to know if something you're doing is ethical, ask yourself, if what I'm doing appeared on the front page of the newspaper, would it destroy my character, my career? Would I be embarrassed? And if you answer yes to any single one of those questions, you, my friend, have an ethical dilemma. Put simply, she said, criminals are taking over our country. This is why, according to the Global Organized Crime Index, South Africa is considered a haven for criminal mafias and bosses to launder money in established companies for money laundering activities. But don't worry about it. We have this all under control because we got removed off the grey list. You know, if there's one thing I've learned about all my years in corporate, all of this is for talk, investor confidence, and a tick box. What happens behind the scenes is not what these people tell you. I can guarantee you that. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but the US Treasury Department sanctioned several South African-based Islamic State organizers and financial operatives in 2022, 2024, and 2025. Some of these, including Islamic State facilitator Zaid Gangat, currently awaiting trial in South Africa, but others, such as Islamic State cell leader Farhat Ahmed, continued to evade justice. Of course he did. Our entire police force is corrupt. They're not even looking for him. Don't worry about it. On multiple occasions, South African authorities had either been slow to analyze or failed to properly handle key evidence. Yeah, not surprised. After charges against Huno were repeatedly dropped, including those related to a deadly attack on a South African mosque, he subsequently attempted to launch the Islamic State of Africa as an official political party in South Africa this year. He remains free to this day. This is the question I've been asking myself. So why would the task team, which claims to assess whether countries are taking effective action to prevent money laundering and terrorism financing, take pressure off South Africa in the middle of another corruption scandal? The short answer is that the task team missed the forest for the trees, praising reforms on paper that did little in practice to rein in systematic corruption. And that is exactly how the ANC apply laws and legislation in South Africa. It is reforms on paper, the practice, which requires leadership and accountability, ethics, and a competence, is where practice comes into play. So praising reforms on paper that did little in practice to rein in systematic corruption. So even with all of South Africa's corrective measures, when it comes to actual prosecution of complex money laundering cases or the arrest of corrupt officials and others linked to terrorist groups, South Africa's efforts remain ineffective. The financial task team is either overlooking the evidence or turning a blind eye. According to Open Secrets, a South African anti-corruption watchdog group, I'm a huge fan, shout out to Open Secrets, there have been no successful prosecutions of any significant politician or corporate official in South Africa as of July 2025. Prosecutions related to terrorism finance remains limited as well, in part because South Africa does not consider Hamas or Hezbollah to be terrorist groups. So even where South African law theoretically permits the crackdown, South African authorities have repeatedly failed to bring perpetrators to justice. This sentence really drives the point home. A state that cannot police its own institutions cannot credibly manage the extraction, processing, or export of natural resources a sector notorious for abuse and corruption. And that's what I'm talking about, the EU and all these countries giving us loans, knowing full well how corrupt we are. But then I'm like, but our natural resources is notorious for abuse and corruption. Underhanded, under-the-table dealings. And in closing, this article says, corruption has become South Africa's de facto currency, traded by elites for power, protection and profit, while ordinary South Africans pay the price in unemployment and insecurity. South Africa hosting the G20 summit. The Financial Actions Task Team failure to recognize the continued extent of corruption not only betrays South Africans, us, but also undermines the very architecture meant to protect the globe from the contagion of criminal governance. If South Africa's slide continues unchecked, the cost will not stop at its borders. Not a single European G20 country stood up or has held the ANC accountable, like cold water across the face. They don't care about us. So sure, we went through apartheid over 30 years ago, and it was a system that divided South Africans by race. I don't deny that people suffered because of it. But it was also 31 years ago. Corruption is a system we're fighting now, something we actually can do something about, because corruption divides us through privilege and access, and it doesn't care if you're black or white. So we need to confront this head on. We need to have a dedicated focus on the statistics, the data, the downward trend for every single economic indicator. If we don't do this, we'll look back one day and realize we traded one injustice for another. So in closing, I just want to reinforce the fact that every single one of us is responsible for educating each other, our colleagues, our family, our friends. Tell your hairdresser, share it on social. We are responsible for changing the narrative, because every single private and public institution is profiting off this chaos. We absolutely have to shift our focus, because corruption is the new apartheid. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it insightful. So if you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe and drop me a like, and then comment and let me know if that grey list confused you as much as it did me. Because the facts are there. It really is as if everybody's living in a very different world. I enjoyed making this video for you. Thanks for sticking it right to the end. And of course, shout out to Nikki and Paul. You guys are amazing. Part of the Nick's Rambles Club. All of you are welcome to join. The price of $14.99, a small perk. And that'll be once a month. It just supports me in getting these videos done. Other than that, the weather in Joburg is middle of winter. I'm not kidding you. And would you believe Monday is the 1st of December. I don't know how hysterical or comfortable I am about that news. Regardless, I hope you guys have a fabulous day. Thank you all for your support, and especially to all my new subscribers. Have a great day, guys. Over and out.